The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with quiet activity. Hundreds of different alien species sat in their designated seats, each breathing different air through personal atmosphere masks. The lighting shifted constantly to accommodate eyes that saw in different spectrums. This was Harmony Prime, the neutral station where the galaxy's civilizations came together to maintain peace. Councillor Vexhai of the Altarian Republic adjusted his translator unit and looked toward the central platform. Today was supposed to be routine. The xenolinguist team had been working for months to properly translate human languages, and they were finally ready to present their findings. It should have been simple academic work. The lead xenolinguist, a tall, thin creature called Dr. Morketh, stepped up to the speaking platform. Her species, the Helios, looked like living crystals that chimed when they moved. She held a data tablet in her four-fingered hands and cleared her throat with a sound like wind chimes. "Honored counselors," she began, "we have completed our analysis of the human homeworld's linguistic history. We have studied their oldest preserved languages, including something they call Sumerian, Sanskrit, and Proto-Germanic." The council members settled into their seats. This was expected to be boring but necessary work. Understanding member species better was always important for trade and diplomacy. Dr. Morketh touched her tablet, and a large holographic display appeared above the platform. Ancient human symbols and words floated in the air, glowing softly. "We have discovered something unexpected about what humans call their homeworld. We assumed their planet's name meant dirt or ground," she continued. "The word Earth in their common language suggests this. However, when we examined their oldest languages, we found something very different. The hologram shifted, showing translation matrices and linguistic breakdowns." Vexhai leaned forward in his seat. Other council members began paying closer attention. "The original name of their world in every ancient human language we studied does not mean earth or soil," Dr. Morketh announced. Her crystal form seemed to dim slightly. "It translates to the crucible of war, or where warriors are born." The chamber fell completely silent. The only sounds were the soft humming of life support systems and the nervous clicking of various alien appendages. Several council members looked at each other with expressions of confusion and growing concern. Councillor Zephyra, a bird-like creature from the Avian Collective, was the first to speak. "Surely there must be some mistake. Humans are peaceful. They joined the council without any major conflicts. They trade fairly and follow our laws." Dr. Morketh manipulated her tablet again. More ancient human texts appeared on the hologram. "We triple-checked our work. The linguistic patterns are consistent across all their oldest languages. Every ancient human civilization called their world by names that translate to variations of warrior forge, battleground, or place where fighters are made." An uncomfortable stirring began throughout the chamber. Hundreds of different species began whispering, chittering, or communicating in their various ways. The translator systems worked overtime to keep up with the sudden burst of conversation. Councillor Gorthak, a massive reptilian creature, stood up slowly. His species was known for their strength and military prowess. "Dr. Morketh, are you saying that humans have been lying about their planet's name?" "Not lying, exactly," the xenolinguist replied carefully. "When they joined the Galactic Council, they gave us the name Earth because that is what they call it in their modern common language. They seem to have forgotten what the name originally meant." "Or," interrupted Vexhai, his voice barely above a whisper, "they chose to forget." The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every council member knew the importance of names in galactic culture. A world's name usually reflected something fundamental about its nature or its people. If humans came from a place literally named after war, Councillor Thexmore, an aquatic species whose tank suit gurgled quietly, raised a tentacled appendage. "This must be investigated further. We need to review our historical records. If this name is accurate, there may be other information about this world in our archives." Dr. Morketh nodded, her crystal body chiming softly. "We recommend exactly that, Counselor. This discovery raises many questions about humanity's true nature." "What do you mean by true nature?" asked Zephyra, though her voice suggested she was afraid of the answer. "Think about it," Dr. Morketh replied. "We have always assumed humans were typical for their species classification. They are physically strong for their size, but we attributed that to their gravity level. They adapt quickly to new environments, but many species do. They learn our technologies fast, but they are clearly intelligent." She paused, looking around the chamber at hundreds of concerned alien faces. "But what if we have been looking at this wrong? What if these traits are not typical adaptations, but the result of their world specifically creating warriors? Counselor Vexhai felt his stomach drop. His datapad slipped from his nerveless fingers and clattered to the floor. Around the chamber, other council members were beginning to understand the implications. "You are suggesting," Gorthik said slowly, "that humans are not a normal species that developed naturally. You are saying they were forged by their world into something else." "I am suggesting we need more information before we draw any conclusions," Dr. Morketh replied diplomatically. "But yes, the linguistic evidence points to a world that specifically created warriors." The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Species that had never agreed on anything before suddenly found themselves united in concern. The Altarians whispered among themselves in their musical language. The crystalline Helios chimed anxiously. The aquatic merfolk in their tank suits bubbled frantically. "Order! Order!" called the council speaker, an elderly being whose species was known for their neutrality and wisdom. "We must approach this calmly and scientifically." But calm was the last thing anyone felt. Humans had been members of the Galactic Council for 3 years now. They had colonies on 17 worlds. They had trade agreements with dozens of species. Their ships traveled freely throughout Council space, and according to their own ancient languages, they came from a world whose very name meant it was designed to create warriors. "I motion for an immediate research committee," announced Thexmore. "We need to examine our historical archives, our mythology, and our oldest records. If humans truly come from a warrior world, there may be references to it in our ancient texts." "Seconded," called Vexhai, his voice shaking slightly. "All in favor?" asked the council speaker. Every single appendage, wing, tentacle, and limb in the chamber rose in agreement. The vote was unanimous. As the council began organizing research teams and assigning tasks, one thought echoed through every mind in the chamber. What exactly had they welcomed into their peaceful galactic community? Dr. Morketh gathered her data tablets and prepared to leave the platform. As she walked away, she could hear hundreds of different species all asking the same question in their own languages. "What have we done?" The chamber slowly emptied as council members rushed to contact their homeworlds and begin searching their oldest records. But the question remained hanging in the air like an unspoken fear. If Earth really meant where warriors are born, what did that make the humans? And more importantly, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? 3 days had passed since the Council's emergency session, and research teams across the galaxy were working frantically. On the scholarly world of Lexicon, ancient keeper Morthul sat surrounded by thousands of data crystals containing his species' oldest stories and legends. His 8 eyes moved independently as he scanned through millennia of preserved knowledge. The Lexiconian archives were famous throughout the galaxy for their complete historical records. If any mention of a warrior world existed, it would be found here. Morthul had been searching for 72 hours straight, sustained only by nutrient injections and growing dread. "Computer, search for references to Death World, Warrior Planet, or Forge World," he commanded for the 100th time, using different keyword combinations. Search complete. 17,432 results found. Morthul's heart stopped beating for a moment. 17,000 results. That was not possible. Death worlds were supposed to be mythical. They were stories told to children, legends to explain why the universe was dangerous. He opened the first file with trembling manipulator arms. It was from the earliest period of Lexiconian civilization, over 50,000 years ago. The text was written in Old Lexiconian, a language so ancient that few modern scholars could read it fluently. "In the third spiral arm of the galaxy lies the world of eternal conflict," the text read. "Here dwells a species that knows only war. They fight their planet, they fight each other, and they fight anything that moves. The world itself creates warriors from birth to death. Even their young are dangerous. Even their weak are strong." Morthul felt his secondary hearts begin to race. He opened another file, this one from a completely different historical period. "The demon planet breeds creatures that hunt for pleasure," it warned. "They do not kill for food or territory. They kill because their world taught them that everything is prey. Their children play games that would kill our warriors. Their elders remember wars that lasted longer than entire civilizations." With growing horror, Morthul realized these were not isolated stories. Every major period of Lexiconian history contained references to this mythical death world. The descriptions varied, but the core details remained consistent. A planet that created perfect warriors, inhabitants who thrived in conditions that would kill other species, and a terrifying adaptability that made them dangerous beyond measure. Meanwhile, on the crystal homeworld of the Helios Collective, Dr. Silreth was making similar discoveries. Her species stored memories in living crystal matrices that could preserve information for millions of years. She had been granted access to the most ancient memory cores, crystals so old they predated galactic civilization itself. The memories played directly in her mind as she interfaced with the crystals. She saw visions of her ancestors' terror as they spoke of the world that bleeds. In these ancient memories, she watched Helios elders warning their children about a planet where the very air was poisonous, where the weather could kill, and where the dominant species had adapted to thrive in impossible conditions. They breathe poison and drink acid, the memory voices whispered. Their young are born fighting. Their planet tries to kill them every day and they laugh at it. They turn everything into a weapon. They make war into art. Dr. Silreth disconnected from the memory crystal and immediately contacted the Research Coordination Center. Her report was brief but terrifying. Every memory core contains warnings about the warrior world. The descriptions match perfectly with what we know about human capabilities. On the aquatic world of Myrnos, Counselor Depthara dove deep into her people's sacred archives. The merfolk kept their oldest legends in bioluminescent coral libraries that grew in the deepest ocean trenches. As she swam through the ancient knowledge gardens, she read story after story about the surface of sorrows. According to merfolk legend, there was a world where the inhabitants lived on dry land by choice, where they fought gravity itself every day, and where they had turned their entire planet into a training ground. The legend spoke of creatures who could survive without water, who could generate their own heat, and who treated the vacuum of space like an inconvenience rather than instant death. They are born in pain and raised in struggle, one ancient coral inscription read. Their world tests them every moment. Those who survive become stronger than any natural creature should be. The most disturbing discovery came from the Gorthak military archives. General Krexmal, the most decorated warrior in Gorthak history, had been reviewing their species' combat manuals and warrior traditions. What he found made his battle-scarred hide turn pale. Buried deep in their oldest training texts were references to the ultimate enemy. Gorthak military doctrine, developed over millions of years of conflict, contained specific warnings about fighting children of the Forge world. Never engage in prolonged combat with Forge worlders, the ancient manual stated. They do not tire. They do not surrender. They adapt faster than you can change tactics. If you must fight them, end it quickly or retreat immediately. The manual went on to describe fighting techniques specifically designed to counter humans, though it was written long before the Gorthak had ever met any species by that name. The descriptions were eerily accurate. Bipedal creatures with incredible endurance, pack-hunting instincts, and the ability to turn anything into a weapon. General Krexmal's final report to the Council was simple but chilling. Our ancestors knew about humans. They were so afraid of them that they built our entire military doctrine around avoiding prolonged fights with them. As reports flooded in from across the galaxy, a terrifying picture began to emerge. Every major civilization had legends about the warrior world. The details varied between species and across time, but the core elements were always the same: a planet that actively tried to kill its inhabitants. Creatures who thrived in impossible conditions. Warriors who fought for fun rather than necessity. Beings who could turn any environment into a battlefield and any object into a weapon. The Zephyrian report was particularly detailed. Their legends spoke of wind riders from the Death World, who could survive in the vacuum of space, who hunted predators for sport, and who raised their children by throwing them into danger. According to ancient Zephyrian texts, these creatures were so dangerous that even their stories were considered weapons. Do not tell these tales to the young, one ancient warning read. The very idea of such creatures can drive a mind to madness. On Altaria, Counselor Vexhi's own research team had uncovered the most disturbing evidence yet. Ancient Altarian prophecies spoke of a time when the children of the Forge would find their way to the stars. According to the prophecy, this would mark either the beginning of a golden age of peace or the end of galactic civilization. They will come bearing gifts and speaking of friendship, the prophecy warned, but they carry war in their blood and death in their dreams. Pray that they choose to be your allies, for they make the worst enemies imaginable. The prophecy went on to describe how these warriors would integrate into galactic society, hiding their true nature until the moment they were needed. Then they would reveal themselves as the apex predators they had always been. As the research teams compiled their findings, one fact became clear. Every species in the galaxy had been unconsciously preparing for humanity's arrival for millions of years. They just hadn't realized it. The legends weren't stories. They were warnings. And those warnings were about the species that now sat in the Galactic Council, served on diplomatic missions, and had access to every major star system in known space. The humans weren't just another species that had achieved space travel. They were the living embodiment of every civilization's worst nightmares, and they had been invited into the galaxy with open arms. The question now was, what were they going to do about it? Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of Harmony Prime, with her usual confident stride, completely unaware that hundreds of alien eyes were watching her every movement with newfound terror. She had just finished her morning exercise routine in the station's recreation center, and was heading to her office to prepare for the day's diplomatic meetings. Behind her, Security Chief Krendall of the Altarian Republic followed at what he thought was a safe distance. He had been assigned to observe the human ambassador for research purposes, though his real job was to report on anything unusual about human behavior. What he was seeing made his scales itch with nervousness. Chen had just spent 2 hours in what humans called a workout. Krendall had watched through security cameras as she lifted weights that would challenge a Gorthak warrior, ran on a machine for 30 minutes without showing signs of exhaustion, and then performed something called martial arts that looked suspiciously like advanced combat training. The most disturbing part was that she treated it as relaxation. She had been smiling the entire time. Security Chief Krendall to command, he whispered into his communication device. The human ambassador has completed her morning violence training. She appears to enjoy it. In the Council's Emergency Research Center, Dr. Morketh was reviewing security footage from the past 3 years of human presence on the station. What had once seemed like quaint alien customs now looked like evidence of barely contained lethality. She watched recordings of human children visiting the station with their parents. The youngsters played games that involved chasing each other, fighting with sticks, and competing to see who could climb highest or run fastest. Activities that other species' children did for gentle fun appeared to be combat preparation for humans. Computer, analyze the physical capabilities demonstrated in these recordings, she commanded. Analysis complete, the computer replied. Human children show reaction times 70% faster than average for council species. Physical strength is 40% above expected levels for their body mass. Endurance appears to be nearly unlimited by council standards. Dr. Morketh's crystal form dimmed with worry. These were children, not trained warriors. If human youngsters were this capable, what were the adults hiding? Her answer came when she accessed footage from the human embassy's security system. Ambassador Chen had given them permission to monitor common areas, not knowing what the council was looking for. The recordings showed everyday human life, but to alien eyes, it looked like something else entirely. She watched humans casually lifting furniture that would require power assistance for most species. She saw them eating foods that were listed in council databases as mildly toxic to most carbon-based life. She observed them sleeping in environmental conditions that other species would find uncomfortably harsh. Most disturbing of all, she watched a human teenager named Marcus, Ambassador Chen's nephew, arm wrestle with a visiting Gorthak warrior as part of a cultural exchange. The Gorthak were known throughout the galaxy for their physical strength. They were the Council's designated heavy lifting specialists. Marcus won while appearing to pay more attention to his conversation with friends than to the contest. Computer, enhance audio on that recording, Dr. Morketh ordered. The sound came through clearly, as the young human effortlessly defeated a creature twice his size and 3 times his weight. He was discussing something called homework, and complaining that his chemistry class was kind of hard. Dr. Morketh immediately sent the recording to the emergency research team with a note. If this is what they consider normal, what do they consider impressive? Meanwhile, on the human frontier world of New Terra, Council observers were getting their answer. A joint scientific expedition was studying mineral deposits on the planet's surface when a radiation storm struck. The Council ships immediately retreated to safe distance, their crews taking shelter in heavily shielded compartments. The human colonists, meanwhile, simply put on what they called storm gear and continued working. Councillor Thexmore, observing from his ship's bridge, watched in disbelief as humans moved around on the planet's surface during radiation levels that would be fatal to most Council species within minutes. They seemed to consider it a minor inconvenience. Captain, He called to the human ship commander. Your people are still on the surface. The radiation levels are extreme. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system with casual confidence. Thanks for the heads up, counselor. Yeah, it's a bit spicy out there today. We'll probably wrap up early and head inside in an hour or so. A bit spicy. Thexmore's tentacles curled with anxiety. Humans described potentially lethal radiation as a bit spicy. The revelation continued when emergency alarms sounded across the system. A mining accident on the nearby asteroid belt had trapped several council scientists in a collapsed tunnel system. The asteroid was classified as uninhabitable due to its toxic atmosphere and unstable gravity field. Council rescue ships prepared for a difficult operation that might take days to complete safely. Before they could launch, 3 human emergency response vessels were already burning toward the asteroid at speeds that made the aliens nervous. Human vessels, reduce speed immediately, Thexmore commanded. That approach vector is unsafe. Negative, counselor, came the reply from the lead human ship. We've got people in trouble. We'll handle this. Thexmore watched his sensors in amazement as human rescue teams landed on the asteroid and immediately began operations. They worked in environmental suits that looked flimsy compared to Council safety gear, but they moved with confidence through conditions that would require heavy protective equipment for other species. Within 6 hours, the humans had not only rescued all the trapped scientists but had also stabilized the entire tunnel system and established a temporary medical facility on the asteroid's surface. What should have been a week-long rescue operation had been completed in less than a day. How? Thexmore asked Captain Rodriguez when the human ships returned. Training, Rodriguez replied simply. We practice rescue operations in hostile environments all the time. Kind of have to, considering where we come from. That phrase stuck with Thexmore. Considering where we come from. As if humans naturally expected to operate in conditions that other species found impossible. Back on Harmony Prime, the accumulated evidence was creating panic among the Council leadership. Dr. Morketh had compiled a report that read like a horror story. Humans appear to be unconsciously concealing their true capabilities. What they consider normal physical activity would be considered advanced military training by Council standards. Their children demonstrate combat reflexes that exceed those of adult warriors from most species. Their casual recreational activities include simulated warfare, extreme physical challenges, and competitive violence. She continued. Most concerning is their complete lack of awareness that these abilities are unusual. When questioned, they describe their physical capabilities as average or nothing special. This suggests either calculated deception or a species-wide inability to recognize their own lethality. The report concluded with a chilling observation. If humans are unconsciously suppressing their true nature to fit in with Council society, we must ask, what would happen if they stopped suppressing it? Counselor Vexhai was reading this report when Ambassador Chen knocked on his office door. She entered with her usual warm smile, carrying a datapad and a cup of something steaming. Good morning, Counselor, she said cheerfully. I brought the trade proposals you requested. Oh, and I made coffee. Would you like some? Vexhai stared at the dark liquid in her cup. According to the Food Safety Database, coffee contained several compounds that were mildly toxic to most Council species. Humans drank it for pleasure and claimed it helped them think better. That is very kind, he managed to say, but my species has difficulty processing that particular beverage. No problem, Chen replied, settling into her chair with casual grace. Vexhai couldn't help but notice that her movements were perfectly balanced, her posture ready for instant action. So about these trade agreements. As she spoke about shipping schedules and tariff regulations, Vexhai found himself studying her more carefully than ever before. Ambassador Chen was considered small by human standards, barely average height and build. Yet she moved like a predator, spoke with the confidence of someone who had never met a challenge she couldn't overcome, and radiated a sense of contained power that made his survival instincts scream warnings. And she had no idea she was doing any of it. Is everything all right, Counselor? Chen asked, noticing his distracted expression. You seem worried about something. Just some research concerns, Vexhai replied carefully. Nothing important. Chen smiled and returned to her datapad. Well, if there's anything humans can help with, just let us know. We're always happy to lend a hand. As she spoke those words, Vexhai realized with crystal clarity what the Council was dealing with. Humans weren't just hidden weapons. They were hidden weapons that genuinely wanted to help, had no idea how dangerous they were, and were already integrated into every level of galactic society. The question was no longer what to do about them. The question was how to keep them happy, because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. Admiral Thexmore floated in his command tank aboard the Council vessel Peaceful Current, watching the sensor displays with growing dread. What had started as a routine training, exercise with human forces was becoming a nightmare that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The exercise had been carefully planned by the Council's military strategists. They needed to see what humans were really capable of in combat situations, and a joint training operation seemed like the safest way to observe their abilities without revealing their suspicions. The scenario was simple: a mock patrol mission in the border systems, followed by response drills for various emergency situations, standard procedure for any new Council military partner. What they had seen so far was anything but standard. "Sir?" His communications officer bubbled through the tank's water. "The human vessels are reporting ready for the next exercise phase." Thexmore's tentacles curled with anxiety. They had already witnessed the humans navigate an asteroid field that forced 3 Council ships to take alternate routes. The human pilots had weaved through the floating rocks like they were dancing, treating the deadly obstacle course as if it were a pleasant afternoon cruise. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered reluctantly. Simulated engine failure in hostile territory. The exercise called for one ship to simulate mechanical problems, while the others provided escort through dangerous space. It was designed to test coordination and problem-solving under pressure. The Council had run this drill thousands of times with different species. They had never seen anything like the human response. When the human ship New Horizon reported simulated engine failure, the escort vessels immediately formed a protective formation that moved like a single organism. Without any apparent communication, they created overlapping fields of fire that covered every possible attack vector, while maintaining perfect spacing to avoid collision. "How are they coordinating so precisely?" asked his tactical officer. "Our sensors show minimal radio traffic between their ships." "I do not know," Thexmore admitted, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify him. The truth was that the human crews had trained together so extensively that they could predict each other's actions without words. What looked like supernatural coordination to alien observers was simply the result of a species that had been perfecting group combat tactics for thousands of years. Captain Sarah Martinez, commanding the human task force, was completely unaware of the alien panic her casual competence was causing. To her, this was a simple training exercise, barely worth her full attention. She was actually using the time to train her newer crew members on formation flying. "Johnson, tighten up that spacing," she called to one of her pilots. "Pretend there are actual hostiles out there." If she had known that Council observers were recording every word, she might have chosen her phrasing more carefully. To alien ears, her casual reference to actual hostiles sounded like someone who expected combat as a normal part of life. The exercise continued with a simulated attack by automated drones. The Council ships prepared for a careful, methodical response that would minimize risk, while gradually eliminating threats. They had sophisticated protocols for dealing with multiple attackers. The humans destroyed all 15 attack drones in 43 seconds. "By the depths," whispered Thexmore's tactical officer. "How did they move so fast?" The Admiral watched the sensor replay with mounting horror. The human ships had spread out in a pattern that looked random, but had placed each vessel in the perfect position to engage multiple targets. They had fired with precision that suggested their weapon systems were far more advanced than their specifications indicated, or their crews were far more skilled than anyone had realized. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "Captain Martinez is requesting permission to run the exercise again. She says her team's response time was sloppy, and they want to improve their performance." Sloppy. They had just demonstrated combat effectiveness that exceeded Council military standards by an order of magnitude, and they thought it was sloppy. "Decline the request," Thexmore ordered quickly. "Proceed to Phase 3. Phase 3 was designed to be the most challenging part of the exercise, a rescue mission in a radiation-heavy nebula with limited visibility and communication interference. The Council expected it to take several hours and require careful coordination between multiple ships. The humans completed it in 18 minutes. Thexmore watched in disbelief as human crews worked in conditions that would require heavy protection suits for most species. They moved through the nebula like they belonged there, using sensors and navigation techniques that seemed to border on precognitive ability. Captain Martinez to Admiral Thexmore, came the voice over the communication system. Rescue complete. All simulated survivors recovered. Permission to return to base? Granted, Thexmore managed to say. Outstanding work, Captain. Thank you, sir, Martinez replied. The crew enjoyed the exercise. It was a nice change of pace from our usual patrols. A nice change of pace. What the Council considered an extremely challenging military operation, humans thought of as light entertainment. As the Joint Task Force returned to the patrol station, Thexmore was preparing his report when alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. Real alarms this time, not exercise simulations. Admiral, his sensor officer called urgently. We have multiple contacts approaching at high speed. Configuration suggests pirate vessels. The Admiral's blood chilled. Pirate attacks on Council patrols were rare but deadly. These raiders specialized in hit-and-run attacks against lightly defended ships, and they usually traveled in large, well-armed groups. How many ships? He asked. 12 vessels, sir. Mixed classes, heavily armed. They'll be in weapons range in 6 minutes. Thexmore began calculating retreat options. Council doctrine called for withdrawing from any engagement where the enemy had numerical superiority. They would need to signal for reinforcements and hope the pirates didn't pursue. Admiral, Captain Martinez's voice came over the communication system. We're reading hostiles on approach. Request permission to engage. Negative, Captain, Thexmore replied quickly. Enemy has superior numbers. We will withdraw and call for support. Sir, with respect, we can handle 12 pirate ships. Just give us the word. The confidence in her voice was absolute. She wasn't boasting or trying to be heroic. She was stating a simple fact. 12 enemy ships were not a threat worth worrying about. Before Thexmore could respond, the pirate vessels opened fire. Energy beams and projectile weapons lit up the space between the fleets as the raiders charged forward, confident that their numbers would overwhelm the small patrol group. They had never fought humans before. What happened next would be studied in military academies throughout Council space for generations to come. The human ships moved like living things, flowing around enemy fire while delivering their own attacks with surgical precision. They didn't fight like a small patrol caught off guard. They fought like apex predators who had found prey. Captain Martinez's voice remained calm and professional throughout the engagement, calling out targets and coordinates as if she were directing a training exercise. Johnson, take the lead ship. Williams, handle the flankers. Martinez, to all ships, watch your crossfire. The pirates lasted exactly 12 minutes. Not 12 minutes of fierce battle, but 12 minutes of systematic destruction. Human weapons found their targets with impossible accuracy. Human pilots avoided incoming fire with movements that seemed to violate physics. Human crews worked with coordination that looked choreographed. The final transmission from the pirate fleet was a terrified scream. They're not human! They're demons. They move like death itself. Then silence. Admiral Thexmore, Captain Martinez called when the last enemy ship went dark. Area secure. No casualties on our side. Should we investigate the wreckage? Thexmore floated in his tank, speechless. 12 pirate ships eliminated in minutes. His entire task force hadn't fired a single shot. The humans had handled the entire engagement alone, and they sounded like they were discussing the weather. No investigation necessary, Captain, he finally managed. Return to formation. Understood, sir. By the way, sorry about that. We know Council protocols prefer non-lethal solutions, but they opened fire first and we had to respond appropriately. Appropriately. To humans, completely annihilating a superior enemy force in 12 minutes was an appropriate response to being attacked. As the joint patrol returned to base, Admiral Thexmore began composing his report. But how could he explain what he had witnessed? How could he describe the casual way humans had dismantled an enemy fleet? How could he convey the terror he had felt watching creatures that treated lethal combat as a minor inconvenience? The answer was simple. He couldn't. No one would believe him unless they saw it for themselves, and he desperately hoped they would never have to. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called at the highest priority level. Representatives from every major species crowded into the Great Chamber of Harmony Prime, their various atmospheric requirements creating a chaos of environmental systems working overtime. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension as hundreds of different alien forms shifted nervously in their seats. Councillor Vex-High looked around the chamber and saw the same expression on every face, regardless of species, barely controlled terror. The reports had been flooding in for days. Admiral Thexmore's account of the pirate engagement, Dr. Morketh's analysis of human physical capabilities, the archaeological evidence from dozens of worlds, all pointing to the same horrifying conclusion. Humanity wasn't just another species. They were the living embodiment of every civilization's worst nightmares, and they had been welcomed into the galactic community with open arms. "Order! Order!" called the council speaker, though his own voice trembled with anxiety. "This emergency session will come to order. We are here to discuss the human situation." A nervous chittering filled the chamber as various species communicated their fear in their own ways. The Zephyrians' feathers ruffled with agitation. The crystalline Helios dimmed and brightened in patterns that spoke of distress. The aquatic merfolk bubbled frantically in their tanks. "Before we begin formal discussion," the speaker continued, "I must inform the council that Ambassador Chen has requested to attend this session. She wishes to address what she calls recent concerns about human-council relations." The chamber fell absolutely silent. Even the environmental system seemed to quiet, as if the station itself was holding its breath. "She knows," whispered Councillor Gorthak, his massive reptilian form seeming to shrink in his seat. "Unknown," replied the speaker. "But she has scheduled this appearance for today, citing routine diplomatic protocols." Councillor Zephyra, her bird-like form trembling, raised a wing. "What are our options? Can we ask them to leave council space? And say what?" demanded Thexmore, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "That we're afraid of them because their planet's name means they're warriors? That our ancient legends warned us about them? They would think we had lost our minds." Dr. Morketh's crystal form chimed softly as she accessed her data files. "Even if we could convince them to leave, would we want them as enemies? We have seen what they can do when they are trying to be friendly and helpful. I do not wish to see what they can do when they are angry." The truth of that statement settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. Every species present had reviewed the reports. They had seen the footage of human children casually demonstrating combat reflexes. They had read about human recreational activities that looked suspiciously like military training. They had witnessed the systematic destruction of an entire pirate fleet in 12 minutes, and that was humans being polite. "What about negotiation?" suggested Councillor Depthera. "Perhaps we could reach some sort of accommodation?" "What kind of accommodation?" asked Vexhai. "What do you negotiate with apex predators who don't even realize they're apex predators?" General Krexmal, the scarred Gorthak military leader, spoke for the first time. His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much combat. "Our ancestors' military manuals were clear. If you must fight them, end it quickly or retreat immediately. But they also said something else." He paused, looking around the chamber with eyes that had witnessed dozens of battles. "They said the safest place in the galaxy is as their ally. The writing suggests that these warriors, despite their lethality, are capable of remarkable loyalty to those they consider friends. So we keep them happy," Zephyra said quietly. "We give them whatever they want and hope they never realize what they are." "Is that sustainable?" asked Dr. Morketh. "Can we maintain a relationship based on concealing our terror?" Before anyone could answer, the chamber's main doors opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked in, smiling warmly and carrying her usual datapad and coffee cup. She moved with that casual confidence that now sent chills down every spine in the chamber, completely unaware that she was walking into a room full of beings who saw her as a living weapon. "Good morning, everyone," she said cheerfully, taking her designated seat. "Thank you for accommodating my schedule. I hope this won't take too long." The silence that followed was deafening. Hundreds of aliens stared at this small human woman, who had just thanked them for accommodating her schedule at their own emergency session about how terrifying her species was. "Please," the speaker managed to say, "proceed with your remarks, Ambassador." Chen stood and activated a holographic display from her datapad. "I wanted to address some concerns that seem to have come up about human integration into Council society. There appear to be some misunderstandings about our capabilities and intentions." Every being in the chamber stopped breathing. She knew. Somehow she knew. "First," Chen continued, "I want to assure everyone that humans have no hidden agenda in joining the Council. We're here because we genuinely want to be part of this amazing galactic community. We believe in the Council's principles of peace, cooperation, and mutual prosperity." She clicked to the next slide, which showed images of human colonies and Council joint projects. "Some of you may have concerns about our military capabilities. I want to be completely transparent about this. Yes, humans are capable warriors when necessary. Our homeworld is challenging. It taught us to be resourceful, adaptable, and resilient. Challenging. She was describing a planet whose name literally meant, where warriors are born as challenging. But, she continued with obvious sincerity, we prefer peace. We always prefer peace. Fighting is something we do when we have no choice. Not something we want to do. We're much more interested in exploration, scientific advancement, and cultural exchange. Counselor Vexhai found his voice. Ambassador Chen, there have been some archaeological discoveries recently about your homeworld's original name. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Understanding? Amusement? It was impossible to tell. Ah, she said simply. You found out about the old words for Earth. The admission sent a wave of panic through the chamber. Several species representatives made sounds of distress. Let me explain, Chen continued calmly. Yes, our ancient languages had dramatic names for our planet. Humans have always been creative with language. We like stories, legends, and dramatic descriptions, but that doesn't mean we're some kind of mythical warrior race. She gestured to herself with a self-deprecating smile. Do I look like a legendary warrior to you? I'm a diplomat who enjoys gardening and reads romance novels in her spare time. My nephew Marcus is more interested in chemistry homework than conquest. Captain Martinez collects vintage music recordings. Around the chamber, aliens began to relax slightly. Chen's casual, friendly demeanor was so genuine that it was hard to maintain terror in her presence. I think, she continued, there may have been some confusion between human history and human nature. Yes, our planet made us tough. Yes, we're physically capable. But we're not monsters. We're just people who happened to evolve on a world that kept us on our toes. Counselor Gorthak leaned forward. What about your combat capabilities? The reports from Admiral Thexmore were accurate, Chen replied without hesitation. When pirates attack, we respond appropriately. We train for dangerous situations, because dangerous situations find us whether we want them to or not. But notice what we did after that engagement. She clicked to another slide showing post-battle reports. We offered medical assistance to pirate survivors. We shared our tactical data with Council forces to help improve everyone's defensive capabilities. We didn't demand tribute or territory. We went back to our regular patrol duties and filed paperwork. The simple truth of it was overwhelming. Yes, humans were incredibly dangerous, but they used that danger to protect others, not to dominate them. I have a proposal, Chen said, closing her presentation. Instead of worrying about what humans might do, why don't we focus on what humans want to do? We want to explore new worlds. We want to solve scientific problems. We want to meet new species and learn about different cultures. She paused and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of different species. We want to be good neighbors. We want to help when help is needed. And we want to build something better than any of us could build alone. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Counselor Vexhai stood up. Ambassador Chen, he said formally, would the human delegation be interested in expanded partnership opportunities with the Council? Perhaps increased scientific cooperation, expanded trade agreements, and enhanced cultural exchange programs? Chen's face lit up with genuine excitement. That sounds wonderful. Humans would be thrilled to increase our involvement in Council projects. Around the chamber, other representatives began standing, not to flee but to voice their own partnership proposals. If humans were going to be part of the galaxy, every species wanted them as allies rather than enemies. As the session dissolved into enthusiastic discussion of joint projects and expanded cooperation,